Sports shape lives, build communities, and drive billion-dollar industries. Yet their true impact often goes unnoticed.
From personal growth and well being to career potential, it's time to rethink what sports can do. This is the Why Not Sports podcast. Welcome to the Why Not Sports podcast where we dive into the business and community side of sports. Today, we're honored to welcome Rachel Bernardo.
Rachel Bernardo is a marketing strategist and business developer at a data-driven sports and entertainment consulting agency. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Psychology with a minor in sports management from Texas A&M University and an MBA from the University of Central Florida. Rachel's professional experience spans a range of roles across the sports industry, including work for organizations like Navigate, Orlando City SC, the Institute for Diversity and Ethics in Sport, and Texas A&M Athletics. With a background in B2B positioning, digital brand management, and direct-to-consumer performance footwear sales, she brings a unique blend of strategic insight and hands-on industry knowledge. Furthermore, as a former Division I athlete, Rachel understands the power of sports to build character, foster community, and drive meaningful change. She's passionate about using data and storytelling to connect brands with audiences in impactful ways, while always keeping the athlete's perspective in mind.
Rachel Bernardo, welcome to the show.
Howdy, guys. Thanks for having me today. Really excited to sit down with you and really have a lot of appreciation for what you've been building so far with Why Not Sports. So excited to dive in.
No, thank you, Rachel. We really appreciate it. And Rachel, the first question that we love to ask our guests is, what's your sports story?
Yeah, I love this question selfishly, right? Just having listened to a few of your episodes now, but I think there's a lot to be learned hearing everybody's different sports stories. Mine started off as a track and field athlete in high school and was lucky enough to go run for Texas A&M University. And I think through that experience, that kind of guided my professional journey too in a lot of ways. So I thought, maybe I wanted to be a sports psychologist and really pursued that path, which is where that degree in psychology came from. Soon realized maybe I'm not cut for that cloth. Yeah, I think I thought I wanted to go into sports psychology and have the ability to impact others in the same way that I was transformed by my sports psychologist as an athlete. Soon realized maybe I wasn't cut out for that, or that's not where my passion lied. So had a mentor of mine really close to me who kind of helped me see the greater industry that is sports business. Obviously, what you're covering here on the episode with the show. But yeah, really, I had a mentor at A&M who pushed me in the right direction and opened my eyes to the sports business industry and helped me unlock that passion. The passion for marketing really comes from being able to connect people to products or services that are making a difference, right? So not just trying to convert that to a sale, but really helping to solve a problem through all that. Fostering human connection, I think, is at its core. So in a lot of ways, my journey from athlete to marketer kind of shares that same through line of being able to pour back into others, take that and run with it. So
And how did you get into, track and field in the first place, right? I mean, I know, a little bit about your background. You moved around the US a couple of times. So how did you end up at Texas A&M too along the way?
Yeah, so I think I landed in Aggie lands right around middle school. Maybe not the best place to be, in terms of wanting to see the world, but I think there is a lot of love and a lot of good people in Aggie land. So happy I did end up there. Got introduced to track and field back in middle school. Again, just kind of had some coaches say, maybe you should try this out. And that's when I fell in love. So from middle school through high school, ran locally, and then was lucky enough to be recruited by Texas A&M, my alma mater. And along that journey too, right? Like, I think it's really easy to get caught up in wanting to run for a big institution or go D1. Like, there's a lot of appeal to that, but really just trying to push myself and my boundaries and see how far I could go with it. And I think I got there. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of reflecting back on that, whether through your actual degree in psychology or through your experience on the A&M track team, what are some tangible lessons that you learned from those experiences that have led to your success today?
That's a great question. Number one, I'd say, is just being open to collaboration, right? Like, everybody talks about teamwork, but it's different to translate teamwork into the professional workspace. I think everybody has to learn how to work on a team in some capacity if you're going to work in a major company, even if you're creating your own startup, but also not being dismissive of the ideas of others on your team, and really being able to foster those and pull those out of people. I think that's something that track helped me learn and see, just in terms of the conversations we would have, the training challenges we would face together, and trying to figure out ways to work around those. And then also now in the workplace, right? Working with people across all ranges of seniority, across all different interests and styles of communication. I think being able to foster a environment of openness is really important.
Yeah, and Rachel, I've noticed a lot of student athletes have a hard time transitioning into sports business after they're actually student athletes, right? So what kind of separates those that actually do get to go into it? Because I'm sure a majority, if not most of them, actually do want to end up there, like you are right now. But a lot of them go into sales, they go into like other fields. So for you, like how does that transition look like, and how do you make it happen?
Yeah, that's a great one too. And I think it's something that I try and help counsel students on day to day, right? Is everybody wants to work in sports. How do you make your way in? Ultimately, I think as a student athlete, you have the skill sets. There's no doubt you have transferable skills. A little bit about all of this is about how you market yourself and how you sell yourself and demonstrating the connection between the skill set that you have as an athlete to the workplace. I think that's where a lot of times athletes can fall short is you've been so focused on giving your all to a sport, to a team, maybe selflessly prioritizing those aspects of your life above, maybe like the business development piece or your professional career that you kind of get to that point and you realize, oh shoot, how do I do this? So I think one thing that's super helpful as you think through how to get into sports is really the networking piece. And I know that's something that you hear time and time again. Sports ultimately is about who you know in a lot of ways beyond your immediate circle, right? Maybe people who look like you, think like you, operate in the same environments of you. I think it's really important to network people, not just in sports, but also outside of your industry, people who don't look like you, people who maybe you wouldn't have crossed paths with otherwise, unless you're like taking a really strategic effort to reach out. And I think there's a little bit of humility that goes along with it too, of being the person willing to reach out. I could go on a tangent about that, but I feel like we're in an age where everything is at your fingertips, and if you're not taking advantage of that and leveraging that, you're probably missing out. You might not find your way into sports. So
No, totally. And something that a big revelation of ours, as we've made this show, is how big the sports industry actually is, right? It's an ecosystem of so many different industries. And so how do you navigate what industry is the right fit for you, right? I mean, there's like the law side, the business side, NIL, actual
yeah.
ticket sales, TV and programming, like media. So how do you navigate that, and how did you end up where you are right now?
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest piece of advice I'd have on that front is just making sure you're taking the time to fail. And I think that's something that we don't foster enough of or, pursue enough of is the fear of failure holds us back from taking a chance or taking an opportunity where maybe we learn a lot about our interests and we discover something we love, or maybe it's an opportunity where we fail a little bit and we realize maybe I'm not as interested in event marketing as I thought I was, but you still took that chance and that step to explore that interest. So as you're kind of figuring out maybe like what specialty or what lane to move into, I think you have to open yourself up to a broad range of experiences. Now, some people are really lucky, right? In the sense that they kind of have a very clear vision of where they're going, where they're headed. They've always kind of known what their interests lie, but I think the majority of us are not like that. So being willing to give yourself the space to fail and explore your interests fully, I think is really important.
Yeah, so kind of connecting that broader lesson with your own personal story, kind of what are some experiences that you had, and kind of tangibly, what did you kind of take away in regards to kind of the aspects that you liked and the aspects that you thought weren't as suited for you?
Yeah, that's a great one too. I guess off the bat, first thing that comes to mind is grad school. Everybody in grad school, especially when you're in a sports specific program, is focused on gaining as much sports relevant experience as possible, whether that's an internship, a part-time job, any kind of freelance work you can do. And I was trying to do all of that. So I did a little bit of freelance writing. I worked, like you mentioned, at Orlando City in the ticketing department. And, I think it's okay to have those experiences where maybe I'm not working in ticketing long term, but I still learned how the business operates. I learned what it's like to operate in a front office environment. What are the needs? How can I anticipate those needs, even at a more entry level role? So ultimately, I feel like even though you might take on a role that doesn't directly define where you go next, you can still have a lot of learnings from that role too.
Is there like one example in particular that you could think about, like, oh, like, I thought I was gonna do this, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe this was the experience that like flipped me to try something else? I mean, I know you worked the MLS. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say for me, I always kind of had this idea in my mind that I wanted to go work in collegiate athletics. I was a collegiate athlete. I had great mentors in that realm, and I wanted to pour back into student athletes the same way. And it's not necessarily that through line changed, right? I think I still have this through line in my career of wanting to help people create authentic connection, mentor, but I'm just doing that in a different way. So when I was in graduate school and more exposed to the sports business industry as a whole, I discovered Navigate. And like you mentioned, Navigate is a boutique, data-driven consulting agency, and we work with clients across professional, collegiate sports, entertainment, brands, kind of anyone under the sun who needs some clarity and confidence. So once I realized this other realm of sport existed, that's trajectory in terms of where I was going with my career.
Once in your Navigate, right? Like, tell me why that experience is so unique, though, in terms of consulting, especially in sports consulting?
Yeah. So I think too, something to realize about the industry, whether you're working in a large brand or a small agency, is that ultimately everything comes back to the people that you're working with. You really are spending a lot of time once you go into your full-time career with the people that you're around. And something that for me is definitely a differentiator about Navigate are the people that I'm working with day to day. Not only are they good people, people that I can put a lot of trust in, both personally and professionally, but they're smart people, driven people. And I feel like we're all working towards a common goal. Whereas I think sometimes when you move to maybe say like a larger organization, it's harder to maintain some of that people feel that really can give an organization success. So for me, working alongside sharp people who are smarter than me, who think differently than me, has made all the difference in my own career.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of within your current role, working with large amounts of data for consulting within the sports and entertainment space, what are some trends in the industry that kind of really excite you, think are kind of drive the way that companies operate in the future?
This is a great one. I think immediately the first thing that comes to mind for me is AI, of course, right? Not only are we starting to offer strategic consulting around AI, but it's something everybody else is thinking of. So historically, like maybe we have access to a lot of different databases. We have our own historic data, but how are we utilizing AI to help draw parallels that maybe we didn't see previously, or that would have taken us, days or months to draw parallels between in an instant? And I think AI is ultimately going to be the game changer, not only for Navigate, but many other businesses, sports teams, in how they truly understand their consumer. And that impacts everything, right? Like how you market towards your consumer, how you create, an authentic fan experience that is desired by your true fan. So I think AI is going to equip us with the capability of really getting a better grasp on who your true fan is, and then how you can, adjust what you're already doing to capture that true fan a bit more.
Totally. And Rachel, I'm curious, can you tell us a little bit more about, the projects that you've worked on, right? Maybe obviously you can't drop the client names and things like that, but some of the type of work that you're doing, right? I mean, we read your bio and we were like, dang, like this is a lot. Like what can we actually, dive into the DTC, dive into like the data analytics, like it seems like you've learned a lot, in your current position. So could you tell us a little bit more about like, that client side?
Yeah, definitely. So I don't sit maybe necessarily super client facing in my role. I kind of sit in this niche where I support the agency in-house. So doing our brand strategy, brand management, and working with project managers across multiple teams and levels to make sure that we're supporting their business needs kind of from behind the scenes in a lot of ways too. So especially at a small business like Navigate, we're 26 members full time. Marketing and business development and client relationships are all super closely woven together. So you can't really separate one department from the other. While I might not be working maybe in like a client management role, managing those relationships day to day, I do get to work on maybe larger scale projects that help us attract and retain clients, right? Sharing our industry knowledge, helping equip them with the knowledge they need to go into a meeting and feel prepared. And one of those projects that stands out for me was a TED Talk that our founder gave just over 2 years ago now, I believe. And really, that TED Talk dives into why sports are the ultimate connector, and kind of just takes everybody back a step and reminds everybody why we're doing what we're doing in the sports industry. Yeah, it's great to say you work in sports. Everybody wants to be able to say that. But ultimately, it all comes down to human connection. Right now, we're going through a loneliness crisis. I'm sure you've seen our Surgeon General and his report on the loneliness epidemic. And really, I do think sports has the power to solve that. And so this talk was able to help shape the script, the narrative. We went through so many iterations. And then obviously, AJ, our founder, got up there and delivered it very well. But going through that process, not only the iterations of the script, the research that went into it. But at its core, I think the message is there, right? Like people are at the core of what we do. And so along every stage of the journey, whether you're in business development, whether you're in marketing, you can't forget that people sit at the center of your mission. So
No, absolutely. And then Rachel, could you tell us a little bit more about that TED Talk, right? What are some of the major points that stood out to you?
yeah, definitely. If anyone listening to this hasn't watched it yet, shameless plug, I think it's worth the watch. Ultimately, too, I think one of the key elements of that talk is recognizing that a lot of times, and this is maybe where the psychology comes in, right? We're operating at a level where we're not necessarily aware of all of our behaviors or all of our motivators. So I think, thinking as like a business executive, right? You have to try and uncover those things that people may not even know about themselves. And so the more that I think people in the business realm can pull on those psychology principles, the more effectively they'll be able to leverage the data at their fingertips and make informed decisions and really tap into the human element versus just trying to make a sale. And I think we're seeing that shift, and we've seen that shift for quite a while now.
What do you think are some good brands that do a really good job of that?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think, every brand has a different strategy or a different reason for what they do, right? For me, one that stands out, just like being Gen Z, is Duolingo. I think they've done a great job of humanizing their brand in a way that's relatable through their meme content, whatever. Just because that's the approach Duolingo took doesn't mean that's the approach that every brand now needs to follow. Not every brand needs to be posting memes on social media the way that Duolingo does.
Mm-hmm.
Now, was Duolingo a first mover in terms of how they gain traction around that? Yes. But I think in terms of someone doing it well, definitely Duolingo. Beyond that, another that I really appreciate, and I am a Formula One fan, so don't hate me for saying this, but Visa, Cash App, Red Bull. I think it's very clear across the board with their marketing, their branding, that they're targeting the Gen Z consumer, and they're doing so very successfully. I just think back to Miami this weekend, right? Every celebrity out in the world is at the race. Every US celebrity is in the garage, but having specific celebrities with them, like Timothée Chalamet, who's really big, I think, in the Gen Z realm, the really sick, pink branding, I think they're doing it really well. So while they're also a team, I think their branding is really strong.
And Rachel, I'm curious. You have a background in psychology. You've given us a lot of great insights. From that intrinsic perspective, what qualities do you believe define a great leader in sports and in business? Like, what are some of the things that you appreciate and some of the things that you've learned?
This is a great one too. And I wouldn't be the person that I am, right, without the mentors who've poured into me. And so I hope anyone listening to this if you don't have those mentors in your life, go find them, because I think there's a lot to be learned from others. And some of the key things that I think are really important in this industry are just like an innate curiosity. So whether you're early in your career, you're far down the road, you're a CEO, like some of the previous guests you've had on, I think you need to have an openness and a curiosity to explore whatever's next. And by that, I mean, we're always going to be facing some sort of change or challenge. If there's one thing that's inevitable in life, it's that things are going to change. Some people probably predicted the wave of AI, but for a lot of us, we may not have seen it coming. So I think openness and curiosity to exploring and seeing how you can leverage new technologies, but beyond that, just an openness in how you approach life, I think is really important. Beyond that too, I think an ability to operate in ambiguity is also a really important skill, especially when you're earlier in your career, right? People are often hiring for folks who can just kind of get stuff done. And if you're able to do so in a way that's strategic, still well thought, but also able to do that in situations where maybe you don't have super clear parameters, I think that can be a defining differentiator for success.
Yeah. And Rachel, for you, success down the line, what does that look like? What's the top of the mountain for you? Where do you want to get to?
That's a great question. And it's something that I'm still trying to figure out myself, right? But I think ultimately my through line through both my personal life and my professional career has always been giving back to people. In a lot of ways, I think, whatever you give is what you can receive. And you shouldn't necessarily give with the intention of receiving, but ultimately it has to come from a place of true love and compassion. So for me, I hope wherever my career takes me, whether I stay in sports, whether I extend beyond sports, I'm in a position where I can truly leverage the power of giving. And I think that will in turn provide me with a lot of happiness, both professionally and personally.
Is there like a job title or maybe like a position that may exist or maybe not exist that would be cool for you to do one day?
Yeah, I think anything in the strategy realm, whether that's brand strategy, business strategy, I think in those realms, you have the opportunity to really shape the business, or at least say on the brand strategy realm, be in a position where you are helping guide the creative and maybe the aspects of a business that people interact with first. So again, kind of going back to the human connection piece, how can I put myself in a position where I am fostering that human connection and really, I think it's dangerous to say humanizing a brand, because at the end of the day, you are still a brand, but you need to be able to connect with the consumer in a way that feels authentic and genuine. So I think brand strategy is appealing for that reason. Business strategy too, obviously just getting more in the weeds.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of given the fact that a lot of our listeners are college students or young professionals, kind of the three main takeaways that I was able to kind of gather, where you talked about the importance of mentors, the importance of giving back, and the importance of staying curious in order to grow. What advice do you have for students kind of currently in their growth stages to kind of enable to maximize those three facets of their life?
Yeah, definitely. Ultimately, right now, like take time to reflect on your time as a student. This is a period of your life where you don't have any maybe background noise following you when it comes to who you've worked for, where you're going next. Like this is really a time for you to explore your interests and leverage the power in that people often want to help students too. And so never be afraid to reach out. If it's someone that you see and you appreciate their work, be surprised how far a compliment can go, especially when someone someone is busy jumping task to task, having a little moment like that to remind them that people see them, people see the value they're creating, I think can be really impactful. So, say, for example, Enzo, you want to go work in sports consulting and you see someone working at an agency that you think works with some really cool clients, write them a note. It's really as simple as, I hate to say LinkedIn because LinkedIn is a little bit cringy, we can be real, but ultimately I think just taking the step and being the first person to reach out sometimes can say a lot more than even what you're writing in your message.
Yeah, 100%. Rachel, and as we're transitioning to the end of the interview here, we read somewhere that if you had picked any game show to be in, you would pick Survivor. So, what would be your Survivor strategy? What do you think you could bring to that island?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and definitely need to get my application in for Survivor. I haven't gotten there yet, so maybe one day. But I think, you kind of see, one of the reasons I like the show is you see all these different types of players. Some people who play the people game, the relationship game, they really try and pull on those relationships built on trust. You see others who are kind of like cutthroat, maybe into more backstabbing strategy, and that's the approach they take. But I think if you look at the slew of winners over the years, there's not one approach that has emerged as more successful than the other. For me personally, I think it would be a disservice to say one over the other. I think the most successful survivors are those who can weave both together. So knowing how to play the people game, recognize where your relationships stand, but also not being afraid to take a risk or be afraid to fail and maybe make a more strategic move. Maybe you are going to go out and search for the hidden immunity idol. That's definitely something I would do. So I think kind of merging both of those strategies is how I would play the game.
No, that's awesome. Great. I mean, great advice. I think Enzo's thinking about it actually.
Yeah.
Signing up one day. Nah, no. But Rachel, where can we keep up to date with you, what you're doing in your career? Where can our listeners stay connected with you and follow your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just start by saying, absolutely would love to connect. Don't be shy about reaching out. I love meeting new people and seeing how I can help too along your journey. For me, I'm probably most active on LinkedIn. But if you want to shoot me an email, definitely we'll get back to you there too.
Okay, awesome. And we'll be sure to provide that information in the description of the show. Rachel, we appreciated you coming on to the show. Would you like to end up with any other piece of advice? Typically, like what we do for in our show is we'll let you send out good bull to anybody that you would like, being from A&M. So is there anybody you would like to send good bull to?
Yeah, definitely have a few folks. I think number one good bull goes over to my friends at Texas A&M Athletics, Amanda Hernandez, Christy Mejias, Emily, and then two, Nisha, who, has since departed Texas A&M Athletics. All great people who really shaped the person that I am and shaped my own professional journey. Other good bull, my coworkers probably wouldn't know what good bull meant, but all the Navigate team, just great people, would send them a little bit of good bull too.
No, that's awesome. Rachel, we really appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.